Good evening. Welcome to Phantoms and Monsters Radio. Tonight, we're stepping into a category of encounters that do not sit comfortably inside the usual boxes. Not simply cryptids, not simply spirits, not simply extraterrestrials. These are reports in which the witness is left with a conclusion that feels almost impossible to say out loud. The creature did not run, it did not hide, and it did not retreat into the brush or vanish into darkness. It just disappeared. As if reality opened, as if something stepped sideways, or as if a seam in the world was briefly separated. Now, over the years, witnesses have used different language. They've described shimmers. They've described silence. They've described shapes that form out of haze. They represent beings that move with purpose, then slip away as if our world is only a temporary corridor. Tonight, I'm sharing several examples of what many call interdimensional cryptids or ultraterrestrials. Encounters in which the witness is not just seeing an unknown creature, but witnessing behavior that suggests a different set of roles. So let's begin. The Bigfoot problem that never goes away. For years, mainstream Bigfoot research has presented a single narrative, for the most part. A large, undiscovered primate, flesh and blood, biological. And then that is in your framework, you naturally dismiss anything that sounds too strange. One report opens with a familiar frustration. The witness describes watching a popular television show that promised evidence, but instead delivered a spectacle. The premise sounds good. Now, the Finding Bigfoot team travels to Humboldt County to Bobo's backyard among the redwoods to investigate photos of a possible Bigfoot. They go deep into the forest and, in what can only be described as a performance, they use heavy metal music as bait. And the viewer watching this was not surprising. What bothered him was something else. He felt the team deliberately dismiss any sightings that suggested Bigfoot might be something other than a flesh and blood terrestrial being. He noted that in the public setting, a leading researcher specifically pointed out and discounted what he called the wild encounters. And this is where the problem begins. Whether you like the idea or not, those wild encounters are part of the record. They exist and they persist, and they're just not that rare. This witness asked the question directly: is it possible that ghostly creatures or cryptids roam our planet? Could they be residual energies of once living beasts? Could we be pursuing corporeal entities that slip in and out of our plane of existence? He then recalls a conversation with a veteran Sasquatch investigator in the Sierra Nevadas. And the investigator told him this: he watched one of these creatures walking away from him. The terrain offered no cover, no camouflage, no direction the creature could have taken without being seen. And then, without warning, it just simply vanished. No cave, no hole, no sound, no explanation, just gone. When the witness shares a reader email that cuts straight to the core of why this subject divides researchers, the reader wrote, "It's understandable that a subject as odd as this one, involving the supposition of an enormous hairy creature living in the forest across the country without clear photographic or video evidence, could generate divisiveness and infighting. When proponents of a flesh and blood camp clash with those who favor a magical explanation, it can detract from the fundamental objective of proving this entity's existence." The reader continues, and what they describe is something I have heard many times: a connection between Bigfoot and UFO-style high strangeness. Fleeting visuals, extreme speed, apparent disregard for physics. Little physical evidence, but enough trace anomalies to keep the debate alive. And then the reader asks something that should not be ignored. In modern times, with so much technology, why do we not have a complete accounting of everything in our animal kingdom? They point out that we can observe much of the planet from space. We can detect heat-producing organisms with specialized equipment. Humans have explored vast areas. We have thousands of eyewitness reports, and still, Bigfoot remains a question mark. The reader's conclusion is not a declaration, it's a request. More researchers should explore alternative theories. And it ends with a line that feels like the hidden thesis of tonight's show. Perhaps there is a grand connection between all the mysteries of our world, possibly involving other worlds or dimensions. Now, here's what stands out from this first report. When people argue about Bigfoot, they usually talk about evidence: tracks, hair, photographs, bodies. But there's another layer that does not get addressed often enough: behavior. A large animal can hide, a large animal can run, and a large animal can stay distant. But a large animal does not vanish from open terrain without cover. Disappearances are the fracture lines in this phenomenon. They are where the ordinary model breaks. And when multiple witnesses report the same type of fracture, the question becomes unavoidable. Are we tracking an animal? Or are we witnessing a presence that is not entirely bound to this environment? And if something as significant as Bigfoot or Sasquatch can vanish, then the following account becomes even more unsettling, because the next witness describes a smaller creature that did not flee in panic, did not scramble into the brush, and did not vanish into darkness. It walked into nothingness as if that nothingness was a doorway. Now, in this report, the witness begins by describing a trip to northern Ontario. Remote, quiet, further than what locals call up north. He and a friend were canoeing, and what happened first is a detail that repeats so many strange encounters: complete silence. No birds, no ambient life, nothing. And then he tapped his friend and said, "Don't say anything, but look up above you." Above them, about 40 feet in the air, were creatures hovering. He says they could see every detail. They looked like thunderbirds. Beaks are at least 3 feet long. Wingspan is like a small plane. They flap in unison, and he can hear the soft swish sound. He was afraid to make noise, afraid the creatures might notice them. The witness then explains that after seeing too many strange things, he bought an expensive video camera. But one night, he didn't bring it. He was driving home from a friend's house around 11:30 at night. No alcohol, just coffee. He saw what he thought was a child walking ahead on the right side of the country road. As he approached, he realized it was not a child. It was a small furry creature moving perfectly straight down the road, fur from head to toes, small ears. He put on the high beams in the spotlight. He drove right up to it. He could see it clearly. And then he did something that still shocks people when they hear it. He bumped the creature gently with his truck. Not hard enough to hurt it, just enough to make it turn so he could see its face. He said he did it 4 or 5 times before it finally turned. And then he saw the face. A mouthful of teeth, multiple rows of teeth, some sticking out, cat-like eyes. And still, it didn't seem afraid. He began walking off the road. No ditches, no shrubbery, just a farm nearby with a big red farmhouse. And as it walked off the road, the witness watched it do something that left him speechless. He said it appeared to enter a portal. This wasn't like the portals you see on TV. There were no ripples or distortions. It simply walked straight through into nothingness. He jumped out of the truck. He considered following it, but then he hesitated. Because the creature seemed like a baby, and he thought if there were more than one of them, perhaps staying put is wiser. Then he adds one more detail that forces the listener to picture the scale. He was driving in an all-wheel drive GMC van, and the creature's shoulders were nearly level with the top of his truck. Now, this is important. Many witnesses describe portals, but they rarely describe them the way pop culture does. No visible doorframe, no swirling lights. Instead, they describe an absence that only becomes apparent when something passes through it. In other words, the portal is not seen. The effect is seen. And that distinction matters because it suggests that we call a portal may not be a doorway at all. It may be a threshold of perception or a boundary in space that becomes relevant only when the entity interacts with it. So now we shift to the United Kingdom. 2 encounters, 2 different beings. One dark and thin with dim red eyes, the other white, featureless, and glowing. Both appear briefly. Both vanish. And both leave the witness questioning whether the source is extraterrestrial, interdimensional, or something we have not named. The reader wrote in about incidents experienced by relatives in the UK. The first involved her brother who was camping at Overstone Grounds in Northampton, England. He reported a tall, thin, jet black figure, dimly lit red eyes. No wings were noticed, but the posture felt aggressive, like it was staring him down. He looked around to see if anyone else was awake outside their tents. When he looked back, the being was gone. No sound, no communication, no movement that could be tracked. And the reader makes a point that adds weight. Her brother has no interest in the paranormal, no belief system that would prime him for such a story. Now, the second encounter happened at her previous home. Her son and his friend were upstairs and decided to come downstairs. As they passed the bedroom, both saw a tall white figure standing near the bed. No facial features. It emitted what they described as a white aura. It paid no attention to them. It slowly walked toward the window, and then it vanished altogether. The reader adds that she has had minor incidents herself, including seeing a jet black dog and receiving EVP responses. She asked the question many witnesses ask: do these encounters point to an extraterrestrial origin or interdimensional? And in response, the view presented is this: that these sightings may be brief openings of interdimensional rifts, not exactly alternative realities or alternate realities, but overlaps. And then the most honest line in the entire exchange is stated: both theories remain conjecture. We need better evidence, and perhaps advances in our understanding of physics can make sense of it. What stands out here is the consistency of vanished behavior. This black figure does not walk away. It does not run. It is simply not there when the witness looks back. The white figure moves slowly and calmly toward a window, then vanishes. In both cases, there is no sound, no evidence of entry or exit. The pattern is not pursued. The pattern is presence, observation, and then departure. Now we move into an account that feels older than modern paranormal language. A childhood memory from the 1960s, a hidden garden, a night that goes silent. A cloud of light rises like fireflies, and then people walk through it, not as ghosts, not as dream figures, but as beings with purpose. And something among them notices the witness is watching. Now, the witness remembers playing with a younger brother in the backyard during summer twilight in the 1960s. The house once belonged to a botanist who planted rare specimens, plants that grew out of season. At the edge of the back garden, near a river stone wall, there were hidden stairs leading to a private upper walled garden. A place wilder and quieter than the garden below, and located on a steeper hill than should have been possible. Then it happened. The night grew silent. Clouds of light rose from the ground like fireflies, but more diffuse. The light formed a bright cloud. It expanded to the size of a doorway. And then people began walking through it. The witness describes it as male and female, taller than the adults he knew. So beautiful it hurt to look. They wore strange robes and walked with stately grace, and somehow they felt familiar. So the witness moved closer. Then he noticed something that instantly changed the emotional tone. A woman near the front appeared to be commanding a group of shorter, stout beings. Skin like dark tan leather, hair like dark animal fur, longer arms. These beings did not move like the taller ones. They scurried near the ground. They snuffled and grumbled as if tracking something. The witness says he felt no fear until he saw them. Then panic surged, a cold sweat. And then one of the creatures spotted him watching. It began crashing through the brush towards him. But before it reached him, a very blonde woman near the front noticed. She looked directly at him. Her expression widened in surprise as if she was startled to see him. The witness sensed she communicated mentally with the creature. Then something happened that sounds symbolic but was described as literal. A slender golden cord materialized around the creature's neck. It complained and rejoined the others. Then the group entered another glowing door-like shape ahead and gradually faded into nothingness. The witness tried many times to see them again, to find any trace of a portal, but never did. And he concludes with a suspicion that echoes centuries of folklore, that fairies inhabit another dimension that occasionally overlaps our own. Now, this report includes multiple hallmarks of interdimensional overlap: environmental silence, light forms and opening, groups moving with purpose, and an apparent hierarchy. It also includes something rare: the witness felt recognized. The blonde woman looked directly at him with surprise, as if she did not expect to be seen. That detail appears in modern reports as well. Entities that seem startled when humans lock eyes with them, as if humans are not supposed to be aware. Now, from mythic doorway encounters, we move into something modern and personal. A witness who begins with a UFO sighting, then years later, I become immersed in idea that Sasquatch communicates telepathic and may be interdimensional. Then it experiences an energy surge. Then sees glowing figures at the tree line. Then watches one emerge from a tree and speak without speaking. Now, the witness begins with childhood memories of television, the kind that planted the idea that the world still held mysteries. In Search of with Leonard Nimoy, later replaced by Ancient Aliens. Then comes the first personal experiences. After a card game driving near the lower Catskills near Monticello, New York, he stops at a stop sign after crossing a bridge over the highway. Something caught his eye. He looked up and saw a UFO clearing the treetops, moving slowly at the height of the trees. He got out of his truck to watch it as it headed toward the highway he had crossed. Cars were going by. He felt they must have seen it. He had a thought, almost an impulse. Where are they going? Come back. He did not know about telepathy then, but later he wondered if it had heard him. Now, years pass. He marries, moves to Pulaski, New York in 2009. Then, in May of 2019, bored, he starts watching Sasquatch stories on YouTube. He finds a video titled Sasquatch Speaks. He plays it every day after work for 3 days. He hears the claim that Sasquatch will start communicating with people selectively based on spiritual vibration, respect for life, and telepathy. Then he turns off the TV and drives to Happy Valley in Parrish, New York. He drives more than a mile down a dirt road. He steps out of the car, and immediately he hears a howl close by. No wolf in sight, and he concludes that it's Sasquatch, possibly invisible and interdimensional. He moves into the woods and sees a fresh tree branch break. Then he's hit by a surge of energy. He describes it as elation, like being high. So good, he starts singing. He goes home and feels the Sasquatch is still with him, so he communicates in his mind. Later that day, he comes out an accident scene. He comes upon an accident scene, ambulances, a state trooper. A biker is being examined by EMTs with blood from the ear into a puddle on the road. And the witness remembers something from the video, that Sasquatch can help with healing, if asked. So he asks in his mind. He asks if Sasquatch will heal the injured man. And in the moment, the injured man questions whether to go to the hospital. The EMT says there's brain trauma. The witness thanks the Sasquatch. Later, the man heals quickly. Then, another day, the witness hears a knock on the window, sees his wife on the phone. She didn't hear it. He steps outside. He looks toward the woods, and he sees Sasquatch figures at the tree line, glowing green. He describes them as space ghosts, the best comparison that he can find. Then it escalates. He walks toward the pool deck. He gazes into the woods, and he watches a glowing Sasquatch emerge, partially passing through the trees. He speaks aloud, saying it to come closer. It can come closer, and it does approach. Another follows, a female carrying an infant. Now it's 3 feet away from him, below him as if he stands on the deck. and he says hello. It continues the conversation. Now, this account contains multiple themes we see across interdimensional reports. Energy effects on the witnesses, telepathic style communication, glowing forms, and most notably, partial emergence through solid matter. A being passing through a tree, whether this is a literal physical transgression, an altered perception, or some boundary condition that we can't measure. The witness experience is consistent with other reports. They did not see something hiding behind a tree. They saw something coming through it. Now we move to a classic Bigfoot encounter with a twist. A witness steps away from the porch to observe deer, becomes fixated on a giant moon. Time stretches, the world narrows, and then something breathes hot on the back of his neck, something enormous, something inches away. And then in a split second, it disappears through what looked like a slit in a green screen. But before we talk about the next report, if you're enjoying tonight's presentation and want to hear more stories like this, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Phantoms and Monsters Radio. It really helps us to reach more people who are searching for answers about the unexplained. And make sure to click the notification button so you won't miss any of our live shows. The year is 1989. A witness and his wife visit his sister's house or home in Roan Mountain. After a few days exploring, they spend a quiet day at home. That evening, they grill, have cold beverages, and around 9 p.m., the witness steps onto the back porch to grab another beer. He sees half a dozen deer in the field behind the house, about 100 yards away. One deer has a nice rack. He wants to see the points, so he quietly slips off the porch and makes his way to the corner of the fence, closing the distance to 60 or 70 yards. And as he stands watching, he notices the moon. And when he says he noticed it, he means it appeared enormous, closer than he had ever seen it. His attention locks onto it. Now, he later thinks he stood there for about 20 minutes, but it was over an hour. He then feels a tick on the back of his neck. He shrugs, rolls his shoulder. The deer suddenly bolts. The sound snaps him out of his fixation. He realizes he's been there longer than intended, and he decides to go back inside. As he looks at the moon again and mutters, "Wow." And then it happens. Hot breath on the back of his neck, and the deepest rumble he ever felt, heard, or both. He turns his head. He sees darkness filling his peripheral vision. And then the realization hits. It's a Bigfoot. His face is 8 to 10 inches from the creature's upper abdomen. He looks up and sees a massive muscular chest protruding outwards. Chest at least 4.5 feet wide, shoulders broad as basketballs. The creature is around 10 feet tall and weighs 700 to 800 pounds. From his angle, he can't see the face, only a squared-off bearded chin. The arms are covered in long dark hair, 4 to 6 inches. Everything happens in a split second. The creature shifts from bent to upright and steps back. Then the witness describes the moment that defines tonight's theme. As the creature moved its left leg over its right, it seemed to slip through a slit in a green screen, portal, doorway, seam. He didn't know. He only knew the enormous creature had disappeared instantly. No foul odor, just a faint musky smell like a horse. Now, this report contains a classic component observed in high strangeness cases: fixation, a narrowing of perception, time distortion, then sudden proximity contact, and then the impossible departure. The phrase "slit in a green screen" is crude but powerful because it captures what some witnesses try to describe: a seam, a boundary, a place where the world briefly behaves like a surface rather than a volume. Now we shift to something that many listeners will recognize even if they rarely speak about it: childhood experiences, little people, beings under the bed, and a strange mechanical detail how the child ends up on the floor with the pillows still in place. A woman, now 73, wrote about a report I had previously posted, but what she shared was deeply personal. As a little girl, she had dreams about little people living under her bed at night. They only came out after her parents were asleep. Her parents didn't believe her, but she overheard her mother say something that still haunts her. How does she always get out of bed and end up on the floor? Now, decades later, she remembers details. It was a double bed. Her mother placed pillows along the side to keep her from falling. The other side was against the house wall, second floor, overlooking an alley between houses. Yet she still ended up on the floor. She remembers waking up rocking side to side violently. Then it suddenly flew over the pillow and landed on the floor with a thump. Her parents often did not hear it. Now in the morning, they found her on the floor. Now, after hitting the ground, she felt terrible, but usually fell back to sleep and did not wake until morning. And here's the detail that refuses to fit. The pillows were never disturbed. This went on for years, from before first grade until she was 9 or 10. Now, her parents eventually installed a nightlight in her room, shining directly at the bed. And after the nightlight, and after moving the bed to a different wall, the visits stopped. Her father would check under the bed and say, "There's nothing there. No one that small could fit." Now she has learned many others have similar stories. She cites something that makes it even stranger. The standard height from the floor to the bottom of the box spring is 7.5 inches. And some people estimate these beings are 8 to 9 inches tall. She suspects the portal connects them to the people they watch. Not a claim, but as a way to explain the impossible mechanics of the experience. She also includes speculation that touches on liaison and permission, but for this episode, we're going to hold that as her personal interpretation rather than a conclusion. Because what matters is the experience, the repeated pattern, and the abrupt sensation occurs when environmental conditions change. Now, small entity reports often cluster around bedrooms. Sometimes the witness remembers as dreams, sometimes as waking events, but the repeating factors are consistent: presence, routine, control of visibility, and a sudden disappearance when light is introduced. Whether this is an intelligence responding to observation, a boundary condition that cannot tolerate certain stimuli, or something psychological that remains unexplained, the pattern deserves attention. Next, we move to a report where a portal is not implied. It's described as a shimmer like water inside a stone. Two small beings step out. They attempt to pull the witness towards it. They chase, they throw objects, and later there is evidence left behind. A witness named Dee describes an incident in 1990 near Cooperstown, New York, mid-spring. She and a girlfriend were walking in the countryside. They rested near a large outcropping of rocks, and they heard a humming sound coming from one of the nooks. The girlfriend approaches the noise. Even under heavy tree cover, there was enough light to see into the rocks. She said the sound was coming from inside one of the large boulders. She stood there for about 5 minutes. Then the boulders shimmered like water. They stepped back. The shimmer grew. It turned greenish. And then suddenly 2 small beings emerged. These beings were about 3 foot tall. They wore green work overalls. Their faces and bodies resembled human children, but without adult characteristics. Long blonde hair, very dark, large, round eyes, hands with 4 distinct fingers, rough. The witness compares them to hobbits, though she admits it sounds crazy. Then comes the part that turns the encounter into a physical confrontation. The beings took each of them by the hand and began pulling them toward the rock. They tried to move away but felt paralyzed and unable to speak. Then suddenly they regained movement and broke away. They ran downhill. They could hear the beings chasing them. A minute into the chase, something hit the witness on the back. One of them beings threw a stone. She stopped and looked back. They were gone. But she could still hear the voices in the distance as if there were more of them. They reached the car and sped off, and after driving about half a mile, a piece of tree branch flew out from the woods and hit the side of the car. They looked up but saw no sign of the beings. They were shaking by the time they got home. They agreed not to tell anyone. Later, she heard talk about little people in the surrounding woods. Years passed. She finds a small pile of stones on her patio picnic table. A muddy four-fingered handprint beside it. She moves away, but she still feels they know where she is. Then, just last week, leaving for work, she saw a reddish four-finger handprint on her windshield. On closer inspection, she realizes it's blood. That evening, she hears voices outside, looks up and sees something dart into the brush next door. She has no idea what is happening, but she insists she is not imagining it. And she asks the question, is it possible that little beings like this are living among us? Any ideas? Now, this report contains two features that separate it from many small accounts. First, the described portal behavior is visible, shimmering like water, turning green. Second, the beings behave with intent. They don't simply watch. They attempt to draw the witnesses toward the rocks. They chase. They throw objects. Later, there are signs left behind that feel like messages, piles of stone, and handprints. Whether those signs are proof, intimidation, marking, or something else, the witness interprets them as continued awareness. Now we end in Chicago, a place of streetlights, corridors, and cameras. A place where you would assume nothing like this can occur unnoticed. But the witnesses described something appearing on CCTV, then appearing in person, then vanishing in blue light. And when it goes back to the footage, there's nothing. This witness says it happened in the spring of 2021. He was working security in downtown Chicago, night shift, around 1:30 in the morning. He finished rounds and sat in the monitor room to check footage. After about an hour, he went out to begin the next round. Ground floor first, then up the stairs, checking points. He checked entrances, exits, and locked offices and made his way back down. When he returned to the third floor, the elevator stopped. Door open, no one was there. And the corridor lights were flickering. He says it felt creepy. He got back into the elevator and went to the ground floor. He returned to the security room. Then he caught a fleeting glimpse of one of the monitors outside the room. Something unusual is passing by, too fast to identify, but he thought it had wings. He stood up, opened the door, and peeked out. And then he says something important. His stomach churned. He could feel something was aware of his presence. An immediate nervousness he could not explain. He went back and reviewed the footage. He pulled up the camera feed. Empty hallway. Then suddenly a hazy figure began to materialize. It resembled a human form, but the edges shimmered and blurred, dreamlike. It floated down the hallway, casting no shadow, appearing void of substance. Its movements became erratic. As it moved toward the front street door, it began to gain a more defined form. The witness got to his feet and rushed out. He walked into the hallway, moved towards the front, turned the corner, and there it was, a 6 to 7 foot tall winged being that looked human-like, fragile, dark in color, wings nearly transparent, street light shining through them. wingspan around 15 feet, unfurled. He dropped his flashlight. The being turned and looked directly at him, and he saw the eyes, bright orange-red illumination. Then in a flash of blue light it vanished, gone. He stood there in silence for minutes, went back to the security room. The rest of the ship was a blur. He never reported it. He never told anyone. And here's why he became truly unsettled. When he went back to watch the recording later, there was nothing there. He insisted he did not erase it and had no way to do so. So 2 weeks later, he quit. Later, he heard people discussing the Chicago Mothman sightings at a dinner. He had never heard of it before. He searched online, found my website, and he wrote in. He believes the encounter may be connected. He is hesitant to reveal the exact location. He worries about trouble with his former employer, and he debates how much he could or should disclose. Now, this account includes a layered pattern. First, the witness sees something fleeting. Second, he feels awareness, as if the entity were aware of his attention. Third, on camera, a hazy form materializes and becomes more defined. Fourth, in person, he sees a full-winged being with transparent wings and illuminated eyes. And fifth, it vanishes with a flash of blue light. And then the recording is absent. Even as someone argues misinterpretation or stress, that missing footage detail is what keeps witnesses awake at night. Because it suggests that some encounters are not merely hard to capture, they may actively resist capture. Now, before we close, I want to add a final lens, not to force a conclusion, but to give listeners a way to conceptualize what witnesses sometimes mean when they say cloaked, pixelated, or shimmering. Now, many listeners are familiar with the Predator movies, the cloaking effect where an entity is almost invisible, but a faint outline can be seen, like heat haze or pixelated distortion. A colleague with psychic sensitivity described an incident in her backyard. Now, she let her dogs out and stood at the back door. She noticed something approaching along the walkway, a tall, wide-shouldered being, pixelated, transparent, moving toward her. And as it approached, it stopped abruptly as if surprised she was staring directly at it. Then it vanished. This was not the first time. A similar event occurred the year before. Her impression was that these were not ghosts, not human spirits. She assessed that they were entities from beyond her dimension, possibly alien in origin. And that aligns with a larger idea that has appeared repeatedly in serious scientific discussion, that intelligence may exist in forms we don't readily recognize. A leading cosmologist once suggested that these beings could be staring at us in the face and that we not recognize because they are looking for something like us. Not because they're hiding in usual sense, but our perception may not be tuned to detect them unless certain conditions occur. Tonight's reports suggest these conditions may include silence, altered attention, specific locations, and moments when witnesses unexpectedly lock eyes with what they never supposed to see. Now, across all these reports, the shared pattern is not simply strange creatures. It's strange behavior. Thunderbirds hovering above a canoe in silence, a small furry being walking into nothingness, a black figure in a white aura figure that vanished without sound, a doorway of living light in a hidden garden, glowing Sasquatch forms merging from the trees, 10-foot creatures slipping through a slit like a green screen, little beings under a bed that stop appearing when light changes, small humanoids emerging from a shimmering stone, a winged being materializing on closed-circuit TV, then vanishing in the blue light, leaving no recording behind. The question is not only what these beings are, the question is what kind of reality allows this to happen. Maybe they're not from somewhere far away. Maybe they are from somewhere adjacent. And maybe that what witnesses are seeing is not the arrival of a creature into our world, but the moment the boundary between worlds becomes thin enough for us to notice. If you experience anything like this and you witness the creature vanish, shimmer, or appear where nothing should be, you should send your reports to me. And as always, thank you for listening. So let's go ahead and start the question and answer. Use all caps, please, and I'll do the best I can to answer these for you. B. Mora, how is it that there are several different descriptions, portal descriptions? Do you think it means something, or could it be observer interpretations? I think it's perception. I think just like anything else, every person has their own interpretation of what they see. I've heard so many different descriptions of portals and gateways and such, but I'm sure it's all perception. People just had different ways of describing things, and that makes it difficult to investigate multiple sightings of possibly one or the same object. But yeah, perception is everything. Dagnammit, have you ever heard of a vampire when around people can cause something called a reality pocket, like manipulating time and space? I don't necessarily say a vampire, but I heard of people, even psychic vampires, that have what people call psychic vampires, experience something similar to that. I have never experienced that. Anything that, even if I have come close to it, it was during a remote view or some other type of session I was conducting. But as far as in my own consciousness, no, I've never experienced that. But I have talked to several people who have. Paranormalism Net, do you think cryptids are more intelligent than we assume? Oh, I'm quite sure they are. Not only of high intelligence, but of supernatural abilities that they have the ability to actually do things that we can't explain. Now, does that make them more intelligent? Probably not, but I think that they do possess some type of degree of intelligence or perception that we don't have. Dagnammit, do you believe that many cities had dark energies like New Orleans, Chicago, Seattle, and Portland? I think they may have pockets of dark energy. They have areas that do see a lot of strange things. People experience weird things in them. New Orleans, like you said, is probably one of the well-known here in the United States because of, the lore and everything that is involved with the many stories and the many perceptions that people have of vampires and voodoo and other things. And especially with all the cemeteries in that city. I mean, you can't go a block without running into a cemetery. I don't think it's specific. I think every major urban area has pockets of this different consciousness that causes people to either fear it or to experience different things. Anything else, folks? Okay, well, I do want to tell you that we will have a show next Friday, day after Christmas, and a show the day after New Year's. So we won't be stopping or changing up in any way. If you don't know already, I have been mentioning it on Facebook and to a few other people that I had become involved with a production with several producer companies and entertainment enterprises where we will be or I will be becoming a part of a possible streaming series or TV series that we are developing. I can't say a whole lot about it now, but I will tell you it's based on Phantoms and Monsters. It's based on my investigations and my team as well. And it's going to take up a lot of time, and I am going to be busy. But as far as I know, I'm going to continue doing this as best I can. So, yeah, if I'm not around one day or a week or two, you'll know why. But we'll try to keep that to a minimum. But anyway, stay aware, stay safe, and as always, keep looking into the unexplained. Have a great weekend and good night.